Hey, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast. Alongside Chris Level, I'm Choice Woodman. This podcast, as usual, brought to you by our friends at Cantex Roofing and Construction. Chris, we're continuing to inch closer to football season. You, how you doing this week?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah, we are getting closer. Little injury news coming out of the Red Raider camp with Dylan Spencer and some things like
Unfortunately,
that. So that's kind of you're just trying to get to the end of camp without any more news like that. And obviously we've had some offensive linemen kind of missing
yeah,
stretches of practices, but yeah, that's the thing about NFL preseason and about camps for colleges, man, is you don't want the wrong kind of news.
yes,
That's the because I can deal with so and so is struggling or so because I mean sometimes it's just guys are better when the games roll around or whatever. But
hmm
yeah, you just don't want injury news, especially with guys that have a lot of potential like a Dylan Spencer. But yeah, we're getting closer, and I'm God Lord knows I'm ready to just off seasons are good, but summers are good but they're also can be long and slow and all those kinds of things. So we're almost there.
agreed. All of the above. So we got one scrimmage in the books for Texas Tech. They'll have another one coming up at the end of this week. We've heard Coach McGuire talk about various elements of practice and the scrimmage. One thing he talked about, you mentioned Spencer there. The other side, the defensive or the offensive line that you also mentioned, he says that they're still working through trying to get the five best guys together, mixing and matching, trying to just see where everybody fits. Um, at what point in the spring or sorry, the fall do we usually see, okay, this is your offensive line, this is these roles? Is that after the second scrimmage or when does that start to settle in?
Yeah, well, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, it will be after the second scrimmage technically, but it
Sure.
is that immediately afterwards, or I think you've got part of this is there's an unknown here of without knowing who would be available for second scrimmage and who kind of
Sure.
what people's timetables are and what the health status is of everybody. But at some point, I'll just like look at a date and say, when you get to like Wednesday the 21st, Thursday the 22nd, when you start getting toward the end of this, like 3 to 5 days after said scrimmage,
Hmm.
and you're getting closer to, okay, we are almost to the point where we're in game plan week
Yeah.
and we're starting to introduce things that are specific to Abilene Christian and all those things. That's when a decision will largely need to be made. But so you've got some time still, but it's not just a ton of time. And what adds layers to potential issues there is, well, so and so he tweaked that ankle or there's a hamstring and so he's going to miss another 3 days or a week or whatever, and so you're just trying to get a feel for all that. Unless something changes, though, I think that you can feel pretty good about the following. Yeah, and again, unless they're knock on wood, unless there's some sort of other tweak or whatever. But I think Sheridan Wilson probably locked in as your center.
Okay.
I think Vinny Scurry probably locked in at left guard. I think Caleb Rogers probably locked in somewhere. That's
Somewhere.
kind of and then I think
Sure.
Ty Buchanan may in fact be locked in. But again, I may be wrong there. But and then you say, okay, now Sterling Porche, Dalton Merriman, Davion Carter, Jackson Hughes, maybe, but that your five will be amongst the names that I just mentioned. I believe it's just a matter of figuring out who and where to this point. But I think you have a lot of it figured out. But again, things can change and will. Unfortunately, that's just the sport.
Sure. Speaking of scrimmage and questions, someone asks, this one is actually from Jack. Yes, is the kicking game as big of a concern as Coach Perry is making it out to be right now?
Well, we okay. So my opinion here would be that we obviously haven't seen what's going on in a lot of
Hmm.
situations. We haven't seen the stats and things like that. But what we do have to go off of is what Gino did last year. I mean, I think it was
Sure.
16 to 22, and you know some of the hiccups he had was right out of the gate, and then it was pretty darn solid.
Yeah, I think three misses in the first game. So
Yeah, pretty
of
darn
those six
solid
total.
the rest of the way.
Yeah.
I can only go off of that. Now, I'll say this. I think that Trey Wolf was really good his sophomore year. His junior year was not anything that any of us were anticipating.
Hmm.
And then he gave way to Jonathan Garibay. Mental or injury or whatever it was, it just sometimes this happens with
Sure.
kickers. And then his senior year, he was really good again.
Hmm.
So, but I think Gino was really good last year once things got past that first game. And some of the first game, like one of those misses is like a goofy. Is there time left at the end of the half
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever? And I really hate to. That's one of those misses. I just really hate to fault him for that because that's not really fair. And there was a lot of confusion with the referee and when does the clock start, all that stuff.
Yeah, because he
But
made the first kick that they made him redo, and
mhm,
yeah,
yeah.
so hmm,
So I'm going to say no, it's not. I mean, but when the lights come on, I just think Gino, until he shows me that he's not or
yeah,
that he can't do it, then I feel like I feel pretty good there. I just do. Is this is Kenny coaching at this point when he's talking to the media? Is he trying to push Gino? Is he trying to push Reese? Is he holding them accountable?
hmm,
Does he sense that there may be some complacency? I don't know. You just never know when a coach has a microphone what their purpose is, because I think that you can talk to your players through the media, you can do different things. But I'll just say this, that as far as a list of concerns going into the season, your specialists in general are pretty far down the list. Now, does that mean it stays that way? No, as we just talked about, we would have
hmm,
not thought that Trey Wolf would have had an issue 2 years ago, and
sure.
it's like, damn, what happened? And yeah, and then you do have an issue, and but then you end up with like the Iowa State 60 plus yarder from
Yeah,
Garibay, and that whole deal. So yeah,
kicking was one of those things too that can just make you pull your hair out if everything else is going well in a game, and then you're missing
well,
field goals, and that's the reason you lose. It's just angering as a fan. So it's one of those things you take for granted for the most part if it's going well, and it's really frustrating if it's not. So hopefully you don't run into any of that territory.
I would say this, that if ever given the what I would want from a kicker, if you
Mhm.
could just tell me that you're going to get the three when you should get it, and that's let's be honest, that is you could there's a range here, but anything 39 yards or in,
Yeah,
I don't want to say it's a gimme, but boy, you'd like to think that you're getting your three
ought to
pretty
be.
much every time. If you can tell me that a kicker will do that for you, I'll sign up for it and then live with whatever else comes with
Sure,
it.
sure.
It's what you're saying is when you can't, it's just hard to fault guys if you're missing 52 yarders or 47
Right,
yarders. I mean, those
right.
are those are lengthy kicks and all that. But when you don't get the three
Hmm.
that you feel like it's in your back pocket, that's when you come away with nothing. And those, because I mean, heck, man, Woodman, the stat on it was like 42% of these games in the Big 12 last year were one score.
Yeah,
And some of those are not always field goal, but it's within,
sure.
and ultimately that's going to decide in most cases, not everybody's just going to roll through this league and blow everybody out. You're going to be in some. I mean, TCU's year when they played for the national championship, they made a living off of winning one-score games. Why is there some criticism about Matt Campbell's Iowa State team? Because they've lost 13 of their last 16 one-score games. You've been responsible for, I believe,
Yeah,
two of those wins. So, and that's where the makeables come in. Like you just want to make sure that you've got those three in your back pocket
absolutely.
whenever it presents itself. And
Yeah,
some of that is just on the offense in general. Well, we shouldn't have to be settled for a field goal attempt. We got to get first downs or whatever. So there's some shared blame there, but you get what I'm saying. But I just feel like that last year, Gino gave you that and then some once you got past the first game.
yeah. I think. I mean, really, the last 2 years, kicking has been huge in the first 2 years of Joey McGuire's era. So I hopefully, it'd be nice if Tech wants to stretch out some games and not win one score games this year. If they want to do that, I'd be fine if
Yeah,
they
because you're I mean, let's see off the top of my head, you lose Oregon, Wyoming, and West Virginia are all one score games.
yep,
They're just gut punches because
three out of the first four last year. Yeah.
you're right there. And then you life is so great when it's what was it? Um Central Florida was one, TCU
Uh-huh.
was one,
Hmm.
Kansas was one on the
Hmm.
road. But yeah, like the Baylor game in Waco, that was like a party
I'll
on the
take more of
Brazos.
those.
Yeah, I was like, life is good, man. The
You,
air, you're breathing just feels a bit fresher and
you
smells
don't
a
get
bit
too many of
better.
those Saturdays in Big 12 play where you
What I'm
can just
saying, yeah,
relax
but
a little bit.
I kind of
Yeah.
like the life on there. You kind of get puff your chest out a little bit, like, yeah, that's right, we're pretty good all of a sudden. So anyway, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. All right. Some more questions from the audience. Quite a few of them today. Here's one personal to you. Level says, Level, what game do you want to win the most? If you could get one win guaranteed, which one would you choose? That one is from Jacob.
man, this is there's a variety of ways to attack this
Yep.
question.
And those, I guess those
Because
could be
there,
two separate questions too.
well,
What do you want to win the most? And
yeah, there's like a personal
Mhm.
aspect to it, like who do you just want your team to beat the most? But then there's also like the strategic, like football wise, what would be the most beneficial?
Sure.
And I'll probably answer the question that way first because I think that I'm not going to say Washington State because I think you can go win this game.
Okay.
But I would say that I'll give you another answer, but the Washington State would be like 1B. So I'll give
Hmm.
you 1A and then 1B because I think that Washington State may be the right answer just because if you win that one, I think it really sets you up for a really good start. But I hate to like count chickens or anything, but I'm gonna go just a bit further. I'm gonna say that Arizona game is one that I would, if you could tell me that you're gonna win it, because I think that you have should have a pretty good chance to be unbeaten at that time. This is the first ranked team that you will see. It's a
Hmm.
road game,
Hmm.
and this is where I think you can really set yourself up for, okay, man, we're really in a good position to really get on a major roll here. And now we're starting to garner some attention.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee that Arizona will ranked at the time because I think they'll have already played Kansas State. I'm trying to remember what their other parts of their early season schedule will be. But you get what I'm saying. You're going to face one of the top quarterbacks that everybody
Hmm.
thinks in the Big 12, certainly maybe the top overall player in Tortora McMillan, T-Mac, and they've got a first round offensive lineman as well. So there's a lot of star power with the Arizona Wildcats, and it's a road game. And I would love to be able to say, man, you're 5-0. You go punch that ticket, and now we're cooking
Hmm.
because I mean you would potentially be undefeated. Maybe Washington State did get you, but you could argue that the Arizona game is more important because it's a conference game as opposed to the Washington State game. So that's
Sure.
the game that I would be playing. Uh, but if it's just like a personal thing, TCU.
You know, And I don't think
TCU.
that's a bad answer because I think that may be the swing game between having a good season and a really good season for you this
Yeah.
year. I mean, because we're talking about how difficult some of these road games are. TCU is kind of that toss-up game of you could win, you may not, or you may not win. It's kind of in the in-between territory where they're going to be somewhere around the same level as Texas Tech,
All your road games are
but
every one of them. I mean, all five opportunities away from home are going to be like it swings it because I mean
but t
The Washington State game on paper, and I hesitate to use this word, it would be the easiest or the of the five. But I mean, Woodman. I mean, Iowa State, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Arizona are all in that middle, meaty
Mhm.
middle of the league. That if any of them were to go win the league or contend for the league, no one would be shocked. And those are, I mean, so every road game you have this year, all five of them would need to be celebrated if you can come out of there with a win. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe I mean, I guess I view TCU a little lower than that. I don't put them quite in the meaty middle. I put them right outside of it, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were there.
But choice, I mean, Dana Holgerson and Todd Graham are working for them now.
Oh boy.
What like if you just want to boil it down, like their situation though, what is a bit, well, I think probably why you say that is because you're not real sure about Josh Hoover or the quarterback situation.
It's a big part of it, yeah.
They have a lot of skill.
Hmm.
They made a change with the defensive coordinator, but Iowa State, they've got 85% of their production back. They lose a bunch of close games,
Yep.
and you don't know what the weather will be when you go up there.
Sure.
Oklahoma
Sure.
State brings a ton back, but you want to criticize Oklahoma State? I think the one thing I would say is how far ultimately can Alan Bowman take them, or is there a ceiling on it?
Hmm.
Because he took them to the Big 12 title game last year, and
Yep.
that's not easy. And he had to deal with a bunch of three quarterback rotation crap at the beginning, which probably didn't do anybody any good. And heck, Ollie Gordon did too.
Yep.
Not the quarterback rotation, but he wasn't even the starter with the running back. So there's some questions about some of these teams, but yeah, I just don't think that any of them are gimmies, and they could easily all jump up and bite you. That's the thing. So
No doubt. No doubt.
I just would love to, because here
Oh,
the
I
reason
get
I
it.
mentioned the TCU thing, the athletic directors, I think it's mostly playful. It's like, hey, let's, but there's some spiciness to it too, and certainly some spiciness with the fan base on
Sure.
either side. But that's one where there'll be a lot of chatter after the
Yeah.
game by the winner.
I,
And
I
and
mean,
you better be ready to take it if you're the loser in it, because you're going to hear about it kind of deal.
there's some playful to it, but I mean, there's no question TCU is running and hiding too. They're trying to do everything they can to keep Texas Tech fans, and I
Oh,
guess good for them.
they're just needling. I mean, they're
Oh, but they are
playing
doing
their
what they can to
advantage.
keep you out of their stadium
Yeah, I know. I get you.
because they can't fill it themselves.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, I'm with you. I think from an emotional standpoint, that's the one. I want that one as bad as any. Um, all right, another question from the audience says, Level, who are the best three players that will start the season in backup roles this year? That one is from Mark.
Okay, Mark, and this again, the great question. It's difficult to answer because you don't know what the starter situation is ultimately going to be. So we're projecting here.
Sure.
Basically, what we're being asked to project here is, okay, who's not going to start that's going to be a heavy producer? Okay, and I'm going to assume that health is a clean slate for a lot of these folks.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm allowed to amend my answer.
Hmm.
I think that whoever doesn't start at star between Brendan Jordan and AJ McCarty is one of your top guys,
Okay.
rotational pieces. I think that Davion Carter on the offensive line is like one of your key, whether it's just insurance or whether it's, man, he's really a sixth starter.
Hmm.
I just firmly believe in what he's about and all that. And again, health. And then this is an easy one because I don't think he'll start right out of the gate. I just don't. Micah Hudson.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's
That
a
does feel
pretty,
pretty easy. Yeah.
yeah, because I think it'll be when you trot out there, and I could be wrong. He could trot out there with the first personnel group that goes out there, and it's tricky on some of this stuff
Sure.
when you talk about starters because I've seen, like last year, I don't know if it ever happened where Taj Brooks wasn't out there in the first play or first series, but maybe they went pass heavy or empty in a first play of the game. It's like, well, Taj
I
Brooks technically
do
didn't
think that
start,
happened once last year. Yeah.
but he's the starting running back,
Of
right?
course. Of course.
So
Yeah.
that's how I will phrase it with Micah Hudson because I think Caleb Douglas, Josh Kelly, and Coy Aiken are.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. I mean, the Dre McCrays, the Jordan Browns, the Micah Hudsons, and all that. But I'll say Micah Hudson would be my answer there.
What what about I mean, because we've heard them talk so much about the tight end room. What about a John Carlos Miller type? Is,
Well, or
or
Jalen Conyers.
or yeah, who's not starting that day?
Yeah, I mean, if you
I
if
mean,
you start an 11 personnel,
yeah,
then somebody's off. If I mean, I'm curious if you start 11 personnel, maybe depending on what you're going to do with that particular play,
yeah,
that may be determine who is in there between Mason and Jalen. So, yeah, I mean, you could, that's why it's different because we're
sure,
projecting. If you start the game in 12 personnel, though, then I would still probably have Micah Hudson ahead of John Carlos Miller. But again, great answer there. And which one of these D tackles doesn't start that's going to emerge
true,
as, we've heard a lot of, because only two of them more than likely are going to
right.
be out there. But like we've heard a ton about Jaden Cofield. You've heard a
Hmm.
ton about James Hanson lately and DeBraylon Carroll and all that. Because I would assume that Duda and Quincy are still in line to start. But
Hmm.
Joey even said the other day, like, man, if we were starting, we had a game Saturday, I'd probably put Jaden Cofield out there. Nobody would have suggested this. And
Sure.
again, these are things that are said in the middle of a camp when push comes to shove and it's time when the rubber meets the road and ACU's here in front of 59, 60,000 people, whatever it is. Okay, who in fact got the nod? But starters these days, it's not near as much of a thing as it used to be because defensively, especially, you're playing 20 plus guys,
Yeah.
keeping guys fresh, and so it's really about who finishes. And then offensively, yeah, you may keep the same offensive line group, but and the QB, but and in your case, running back, but receivers, tight ends, big rotation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, okay, yeah, but
And,
that's
and
that's a
deep,
that's a great that's a great question though.
yeah, like defense tackle that you're talking about. They've talked
That's
pretty
what
consistently that you're six deep there where you're going to really rotate
and I
through.
would I would say that there's some positives and some negatives there.
Yeah.
I think they feel good like from 1 to 6 or 7 that there's not
Hmm.
a lot of drop off.
Yeah.
However, it's kind of like what people say is like, man, we got two really good quarterbacks. Well, what the old saying is if you don't have one, then you
One.
have none.
Yeah.
And I think you would love it if you had of your 6 or 7 D tackles that you feel good about, you would love like for two of them to be like dudes. Like, I mean, we saw what Texas was last year
Yeah.
with the what was it, the sweat kid and uh I mean they just had two just like
Yeah.
really good.
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, I'd like to sign up for that
Monsters.
personally instead of a whole bunch of depth and
Sure.
all that. But it also is a positive because you're protected by injury. You've got a lot of competition. You keep guys fresh. You can constantly rotate them and you keep, instead of having to lean on Tony and Jalen for 60, 70, 80 snaps on a Saturday afternoon. So,
All right. This one from Hug Mug. It's talking about the preseason All Big 12 team. It says, Level, do you think that the preseason team will hold true, or what potential tech receivers, tight ends, defensive players could make the first or second postseason Big 12 teams? Because I think you only had
yeah,
Taj Brooks and Dre McCray were your two on the preseason team, right? And McCray was a kick returner, punt returner.
yeah, he was the returner. And
Yeah.
then Taj, obviously, which is as much of a no-brainer as some may think Taj was, that caused a lot of, you know, there was a lot of discussion about that too, because there's some really good running backs that weren't on that first
Absolutely.
team.
Yeah,
This is a running back heavy league when
very
you've
much
got,
so.
Devin Neal and the Harvey kid at UCF. Cincinnati had a Corey Kiner, I think is his name, had
Hmm.
a 1,000-yard rusher last year.
No.
There's some, you got some dudes. I think Iowa State felt pretty good about their guy in Abu Sama, and then you've got some guys at West Virginia. On and on it went. But
Yep.
if I could, like, okay, so
Agree.
who do I think? I mean, Josh Kelly has some star power, but it's going to be really hard to crack that code when you think about some of the juice in this league. One, this is a harder team to make than ever before, just simply because there's 16 teams here, man.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
Mhm.
And so there's going to be some really good players that aren't, all league when it comes to it. Um,
I mean, for example, K State, one of the preseason favorites to win the league, had zero players on the preseason team. Zero.
and like speaking of running backs, DJ Giddens. I mean, he
Yeah,
was somebody
pretty good
that I
one.
think people feel like. So Josh Kelly maybe, but there's some really good wideouts in this league.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that Tosh Brooks is even the postseason.
Hmm.
Just depends on what the numbers look like, how healthy he stays, and all those things. Um, I think that maybe like a guy like Ben Roberts or Jacob Rodriguez have a chance.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who I'd like to be on there. If you could put one of these players, I mean, Baron Morton would be the choice, because if
He would be
that's
the
the
one. Yeah.
case, one, he played and he was available the whole time and he had a really good year. So that's the one that I would say. I mean, would I rule out Gino Garcia being the All Big
True.
12 kicker at the end of the year? No, I would not. If he can eliminate a game like the Wyoming game like last year and have a similar year, he could absolutely be in line for that. Ryan Burgess, your punter. I mean, he led the country in the group of five in yards per punt and some statistical stuff last year. And they look at hang time and touchbacks and all these different things. And I think he's got a chance because he's an older guy that has done it before. I think Vinny Scurry has a
Hmm.
chance to be an all-league offensive lineman.
Sure.
Braylon Lux at corner.
Hmm.
So, those would be some of the CJ Baskerville,
Yeah.
so
The
those would be
fastest,
some of the, yeah.
one of the fastest ways level to get to elevate to all Big 12 or even All American status is a defensive back that racks up some interceptions. That usually seems to be one of the fastest ways to, and if you get one of those, that's obviously a good thing.
You got to show up on the stat sheet.
Yep.
You got to show up on the stat sheet, whether it's PBUs or takeaways or forced fumbles. I mean, that's kind of what got Dwayne Slay the defensive player of the year several years ago, is just all the forced fumbles and just the turnovers that he caused. And he had some highlight plays too. Alan Everidge could tell you about that, or maybe he couldn't. Maybe he didn't remember. But
I
that's,
bet
yeah.
he couldn't.
If you're on defense, it's you got to show up in the stat sheet, and that's why I think like Ben and Jacob, if one of them pops 100+ tackle season and mixes in some other things to go with it, whether it's sack or fumble recovery or whatever, or interception, whatever it may be, then I think they'll have a good chance. But other than that, it's, yeah, you got to show up on the stat sheet. If you're on the defensive line, you better be sacking the QB, getting checked for a lot of QB hurries or
Hmm.
knocking the ball loose.
One more before we close out level. That's from Double T Twin. How many 5 stars will Texas Tech sign in the next class?
I mean, my answer probably right now would probably be none,
Hmm.
because you signed all of what, one, since the ratings
Ever?
are what they are. I mean, you've gotten other 5-star players here. I mean, Mike Mitchell transferred here. Robert Johnson was a junior college guy.
Yeah.
There's been some, Ofa Mohatau was one at one point that he kind of transferred in here, and there was some baggage that I think he came in here with, and all that. They were once 5 stars, but like as far as a pure high school prospect ranked as that, it's one, and that's this jersey number that Micah Hudson's wearing right now. So odds are probably none. And there's only mean, we've worked with rivals.com since I think 2002, and I
Mhm.
think typically they keep that list. It varies because I think if you deserve it, you deserve it. So they don't want to pin themselves in, but I think typically that's somewhere between 20 to 35 players per year. I mean, these are thought to be like can't miss.
Yeah.
We think not only are you probably playing professional football, but you're an all league player.
Yeah.
We think you're, that's what we're labeling you with this rating, and more than often than not, they're right.
So is there, this may
Although
be way
although I just mentioned several examples of guys that,
that it doesn't work out.
well, kind of, yeah,
There,
you got them on the rebound or whatever,
yeah,
but
but like you said, more often than not,
hmm
they are right.
yeah.
So is it important for Micah Hudson to have success and maybe even early success so Tech can land another 5-star, just for an example? Or does that matter at all, do you think, in today's NIL world and that sort of thing?
I think this is a situation to where he's very mature. If you've ever seen him talk or been around him or any interaction, he's wise beyond his years, which is why Tech fell in love with him. They just, this guy's wired differently. He wants to be coach. He's not about glitz and glamour and a whole bunch of money, and he just wants to grind, and he's just, this is where he's at. Um, and so then there's some expectation here, and I think
Yep.
Joey has actually kind of heaped some praise on him without
He's
going overboard. He hasn't shied away from it.
sure.
But from a perception standpoint, yeah, you don't want him to come in and be labeled a bust or not get involved early, because I think he's already acclimating quickly. He's gonna be involved. I think they will try to get him fed a bit, just so they can avoid some of that perception and to get him going too. But yeah, I think that's, you're always worried about those kinds of, that's kind of like game within the game type stuff that people don't even think about. Most
Sure.
people are just like, hey, call the touchdown play. I don't care who catches it. Well, to a certain extent with chemistry and all that, you want to make sure that
Hmm.
certain guys are getting enough touches, or when you're dealing with portal and it's like,
Yeah, I
hey
was about to
man,
say today more than ever.
yeah. And so that's a lot for somebody like, a burden for Zach Kitley and Baron Morton to kind of carry with them, but that's the reality of it.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
All right, we covered a lot of territory today, Level. Good questions. Y'all keep those coming in. Y'all can always email me or tweet at us at double T973, and we'll feed those questions into Level on a weekly basis. And we got two more Saturday-less footballs in Lubbock. Sorry, I said that backwards. Football-less Saturdays in Lubbock. And then I think one more football-less Saturday for college football before that, the season.
Saturday-less.
Saturday-less footballs,
Yeah, that's right.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm on top of it today. But
Yeah.
we're getting close. Level, appreciate it as usual. We'll do it again next week.
Guns up, people.
Word.
Yes. Yeah,
Word.
keep the questions coming.
For sure. That is Chris Level. I'm Choice Woodman. You've been tuned in to the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3.